Alright guys, what's up? New video today. Blue Eyes tier list. I'm going to be reviewing every single Blue Eyes card that exists. I've been playing Blue Eyes for since the beginning, started at Kai, but I've been basically trying to play it, trying to make it meta. I've been there when it sucked, I've been there when it was pretty good. But yeah, reviewing every single Blue Eyes card, what you should play, what you shouldn't play. We're going to do a little tier list here. Basically, if you like this video, subscribe and definitely like it. And if you think I missed anything, please leave it in the comment section. Maybe I'll do a follow-up video or something like that. And let me know if you want to see other videos like this. But let's get started. First of all, here we go. We got the Blue Eyes arsenal here. Every single Blue Eyes card. We're starting with the original Blue Eyes. No jokes, no meme or anything. This is actually an S tier card. Every single Blue Eyes deck plays three copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon. I have yet to see a Blue Eyes deck that does not play 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon. It's very searchable. It is great with cards like Sir Yugioh and just modern cards because you can just basically keep abusing it and shuffling it back into your deck. It's very easy to summon with a ton of different cards within the archetype. Like I said, I've never seen a Blue Eyes deck without 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon, and it's not like they're trying to play 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon. Just happens to work out. It is actually the most optimal thing that you could possibly do is play 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon. So definitely that is going to be at S tier 100%. Next we've got here Blue Eyes Shining Dragon. This card is complete garbage. It is so difficult to summon. If I try my best, out of 10 duels, I might summon it 1 time. That's how difficult this is to summon. In order to summon this, you have to tribute a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, which is absolutely horrific, because that card is already difficult enough to summon. But on top of having to tribute a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, all this has is 300 extra attack for every dragon in the graveyard, which is, sure, you might have 10 dragons, which is 3,000 extra, and it's only 3,000, and this is searchable with Melody, but it's just not worth it. You have to fuse 3 Blue Eyes, use a Polymerization or a Dragon's Mirror of some sort, and then have this in your hand, and then tribute that to get a monster with just basically targeting negation and targeting negation effect and a boost of 300. It's just in every way just not worth it. This card is absolutely 100% an F tier card. I don't see myself summoning this card. It's so difficult to summon. Even if this was easier to summon, I still don't see this card being all that good. They're just better alternatives than this card. Like I said, no reason to play it. Next we've got Rider of the Stormwinds. This card is, I'd say this is just okay. It's somewhere around D tier. This is basically just a copy of, this is Sage before he got off this dragon and became his own person. But basically all this does is it's like a union monster that's not a union monster on paper. It basically allows you to equip it to a dragon you control, and then that dragon monster gets to inflict piercing, and if the dragon monster would be destroyed, you can destroy this card instead. It gives you very little protection. It really doesn't advance you in any way in terms of your advantage. It just gives you basically a little bit of protection and a sort of attack. I can't even say attack boost, because all it does is give you like piercing. So it's really not that good, especially with all of the non-destruction removal in the game right now. It's just too slow of a card. It's just not good enough. I can't put it where Shining Dragon is, because Shining Dragon is just completely, unbelievably, I would never see myself using anything in F tier. D tier, I mean, could I see myself maybe equipping a card with Union Carrier, for example? Maybe, it's not awful completely, but I would probably very high likelihood of never using this card. Next we've got a copy of Burst Stream. Let's see. Burst Stream is a difficult one to place. Burst Stream actually used to be, let me put it down here, I'll give you a little speech. Burst Stream basically is one of the best Blue Eyes cards for a very, very long time. Because for a very long time we had Kaibaman, Burst Stream, and Blue Eyes, and that was it. That was for many, many years. No support whatsoever. And Burst Stream actually wasn't bad because it was basically a copy of Raigeki during a time when Raigeki was banned, which, it's not bad. But the problem is we're in a meta right now where Raigeki is at 1, Dark Hole is at 3, Interrupted Kaiju Slumber is at 3, and nobody plays any of these cards because most decks want to go first. Number one, most decks set up a crazy board of negates, so Like a Raigeki won't do anything, and neither will a Dark Hole. And this is technically speaking searchable two ways, because this is searchable off of the field spell, and this is searchable off of the Bingo Machine Go. It is a very searchable card, but it's just I just don't see it using unless I'm playing a very, very pure build of Blue Eyes. So I'm gonna probably put this somewhere in. I'm gonna put this in B tier. It's not unusable like completely. It's definitely not Shining Dragon. It's better than Stormwinds, but it's just I think there are just very rare occasions where I would use this card, to be honest with you. Yeah, I just don't think that this card is that great. Actually, let me real quick. Let me just add a row below. We're gonna call it, yeah, there you go, new one. We're gonna call it C tier. Yeah, let me add that. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna add the C tier just because I think this card is like C tier material, like perfectly C tier material. Yeah, we'll put that there. I don't think this is like a good card. Like I can't. Like it's a card that I wouldn't play in the deck, but I mean it's not terrible like the others here. Lord of D, this card I would not see myself playing in the deck. It is completely just out of the. It gives you basically targeting protection for dragons, but it just doesn't have any advancement of play, and it's very difficult to get on board. Like you can normal summon it and then summon like alternative eyes, but like that's just a terrible board. I don't see myself playing this. Next is the Blue Eyes Chaos Dragon. This is B tier. This is B tier for sure. So this card basically allows you. This card's really good because it's good with the Chaos Max Dragon. It's not on the level of like an S tier or an A tier, but it basically is a card that's complementary to the Chaos Max Dragon strategy. It's not like you don't need it. That's the thing. You can make a Chaos Max Dragon deck and not play this card, but if you do summon this and Chaos Max Dragon, it's better than summoning 2 copies of Chaos Max Dragon. It has the same protection of Chaos Max Dragon, which is it can't be targeted, it can't be destroyed, and on top of that, when you attack, it changes things to defense mode and makes their defense 0, and then it makes the Chaos Max Dragon OTK very, very easy. Like, it's very good to complement it with Chaos Max Dragon, but it just isn't quite as good as Chaos Max Dragon. Next, we've got the Blue Eyes Twin Dragon. Of all of the fusions, this is actually my favorite fusion. I'm putting this. This is a tough one. I'm going to put this in A tier. It can easily be B tier. Of all the fusions, by far my favorite. It's number 1. It's a contact fusion, and this card wrecks Dragoon because it doesn't die by battle, and after it's done battling, it non-targeting banishes the monster. So if your opponent has like a field of like boss monsters, you just attack twice and get rid of 2 boss monsters by banishing, just by crashing basically. But I always like this card. I always try to leave a slot in the extra deck for this card if I'm playing some kind of pure build. Generally speaking, this is up there. This is a pretty good card. This is Destined Rivals. It's one of the newest cards. This is B tier material. It's a trap card in a deck that actually goes second quite often. It's not bad. Like, it's searchable through Bingo Machine Go. Basically, what this allows you to do is if you control a Blue Eyes, you can negate the effects of all of your opponent's monsters, which isn't bad, but realistically, you're only going to be negating like one effect. Like, if your opponent summons like a Needle Fiber and you have a Blue Eyes, you flip this and then negate that Needle Fiber. You're not going to be like negating a whole field. It's not like it's a quick play where you can negate their field and then attack. It's just not. Yeah, it's just basically you're most of the time just going to be getting one negate, and one negate is just not enough. On top of that, it's just it's a hard once per turn, and it's not like Harpy's Featherstorm. Harpy's Featherstorm is a sick card, and that's what Harpies have. It basically negates all monster effects for the rest of the turn. This card just negates monster effects just at the time of activation, so it's really not. It's not broken. It's just okay. Deep Eyes. This card is going to get better, but as of right now, it's kind of not that great. Definitely C tier stuff. Basically, this card, when a monster is destroyed, you get to when a Blue Eyes monster is destroyed, you get to summon it, and then you have to have a monster in the. You have to have a dragon in the graveyard, and then it copies the attack of the dragon in the graveyard, and if it gets destroyed, it gets to pop all monsters your opponent controls. So this card used to be a D tier card easily. Just because of its leveling, and just its leveling is just terrible, and its unsearchability. because it has 0 attack, 0 defense. You can't search it off of cards like Melody of Awakening Dragon. So it used to be, without a doubt, a D tier, almost F tier, like it used to be terrible. But there's a new card coming out that'll make this card more playable, for sure. So I'm going to put it in C tier. Like I said, it's just one of those like random cards you'll sometimes see in Blue Eyes decks, but generally speaking, I would avoid this card because, like I said, its level and its attack, like, it's unsearchable. Technically, it's searchable through Bingo Machine Go, but we'll talk about the problems with Bingo Machine Go later. But like, the problem is too many things have to go off the right way for you to be able to special summon this card, because you have to lose a monster by battle or lose a monster by card effect in order to even special summon this monster. And like I said before, there's so much non-targeting removal, just different various kinds of removal, that this card is just, it's just very iffy. That's all I'll say. But like I said, it has gotten better. Next, we've got Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. This card is D tier stuff. We used to have 3 Cybersteins way back in the day. Like, we're talking like 2003. So this card could get away with a lot of stuff. But I think right now, it's just to summon to give up 3 monsters and a polymerization to summon a monster with absolutely no effect. It's just, in every single way, completely not worth it. If there was a way to summon this card in an easier method in the Blue Eyes deck, I would say go for it. But as of right now, it's just, it's not super bad like Shining Dragon, where you'll never summon it. I'd say this is probably going to be somewhere at the top of D tier. You can actually summon this off of the Tenyi. There's a Tenyi card. It's a trap card. That basically lets you summon a non-effect monster from your extra deck, and you can actually use that card to basically cheat this card out. But that card needs to be destroyed in order to do this, so it's like very iffy. But I'd say this card is definitely not the worst, but I wouldn't pour my resources into summoning it unless you were building a deck specifically just to pump this card out and use like Neutron Blast or something like that. This one's going to be controversial, the next one, Mausoleum. I actually think Mausoleum is a lot better than you think. Mausoleum is a card that is very well written, that has very good text, that is just waiting for the right like amount of cards, supporting cards to come out. So this card has 3 like really good effects. So I'll put this in B tier. This might be a little controversial. But like I said, this card is very good. It's a field spell, meaning it's pretty darn searchable. It's a field spell. On top of that, because you can search it with terraforming, you can use 3 copies. But on top of that, this card actually has a non-once per turn graveyard effect. So if you draw multiples and it's in the graveyard, you can banish it to search a burst stream. That effect is already good. Number 1, that's a non-once per turn search from the graveyard. On top of that, on top of being a non-once per turn search from the graveyard, this card basically, it's not even like the turn it's sent. It's just straight up, you banish this to search this, and you can do it 3 times in a turn. So that effect is crazy. On top of that, this gives you a double summon effect of level 1 tuners. So again, pretty good. And you can Foolish Burial any normal monster and then increase the attack of a monster on the field times the level of that normal monster. So you can send copies of like Blue Eyes White Dragon to the graveyard. It has 3 pretty broken effects. It has a Foolish Burial effect, a double summon effect, and it searches a card that's basically Raigeki. All one big wall of text. And it's a field spell. It's very easy to access in your deck. This is the type of card that is just waiting for the appropriate level 1 tuners to make it a lot better. Right now, the only tuner worth summoning off of this is basically Sage. Yeah, just because Sage's search effect is at once per turn, so you can double normal summon 2 Sages and then search to 2 copies of Effect Veiler and then go into a Needle Fiber and then just go off. So it's just like that effect is cool and all, but the issue is it's just a little bit. I don't know what the problem is. I think it's just the tuners that have come out so far just do not help you go plus enough to make that first effect worth it, and by consequence the second and third effect are just not as worth it. But definitely, I think this card, of all of the cards on this list, probably has the most potential. Next we've got, this card is just like, I don't see myself using it. It's better than Storm Rider Winds, but it's not like that atrocious. Basically, this is Majesty, Majesty of the Blue Eyes or something like that. Basically, it allows you to send a Blue Eyes from your deck to the graveyard and then negate and then target a monster on the field, and that monster can't attack, which is just like so lackluster. It's unbelievable because it can only send blue eyes. Like Dragon Shrine is a better card in every single way. Yeah, this card is so lackluster. Like, it's just not really that good. Next we have Rampage. Rampage with Eyes of Blue, I believe is the name. This is another one I'll put in C tier. It's not a good card. It's like kind of like a last ditch effort card. Basically, you have to banish your hand, your field. I don't remember if it's your graveyard too, but you have to banish basically like everything, and then you special summon 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon specifically from your deck, which is really not that great. Like, it seems great because it's a quick play and you can activate it in battle phase, and that seems like a really good effect. But the issue is, yeah, it's just kind of terrible. Like, you just it seems like a really good effect that you can special summon 3 Blue Eyes, but the problem is in a Blue Eyes deck you would typically have to draw Blue Eyes, summon Blue Eyes, link away the Blue Eyes, synchro away the Blue Eyes. So you'll have more Blue Eyes in the graveyard than you will in your deck. You'll search Blue Eyes constantly. You will actually not have that many copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon in your hand. So this card is like completely useless in that regard because you'll only have probably by the end of it 1 copy of Blue Eyes. So I just don't see myself using that much. On top of it, if you activate this card and your opponent chains like Mystical Space Typhoon or Twin Twisters, it actually stops this card from resolving because you can't banish all of your cards. You have to banish this card in addition to all the other cards that you're banishing. So it kind of it's just pointless. Like, it really is just terrible overall in that regard. But it is, I'd say, no, I'm going to change it. You know what? It's not like awful where you can't use it, but it's just in most situations they're just better cards. That's all I'm saying. It can help OTK strategies, but most of the time you don't want to use this card. It is better than these 3, or especially these 5. Next, we're going to go to Kaiba Man. This is another card that's just unusable in the current meta. I think it's better than Shining Dragon. It's better than the Lord of D. But basically, you normal summon this, you tribute it to summon a Blue Eyes from your hand. It's just not good enough in any way to be in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Whatsoever. It is too slow. It has an awesome design. I love it, but dude, it's going in F tier. Priestess, this is F tier. I'm not F tier, D tier. She has just, when I saw her the first time, like her artwork, I'm like, wow, that's a cool artwork and everything, but her effects are just terrible. She needs to be targeted, and then when she's targeted, you can send her to the graveyard to search 2 different Blue Eyes cards, which is basically what Melody does, but without having to be targeted and without having to send the monsters to the graveyard. Now, you can use her with Sage, but the problem is if you don't set, like, you can use her effect. You can use Sage to target her to send her to the graveyard, but then you can chain her effect to send her to the graveyard, but then Sage won't resolve. So it's kind of like pointless, because then you'll basically search 1 copy of Alternative instead of summoning with Sage. So you target it for nothing. But like, it's just not worth it in any single way whatsoever. And the second effect of this card is you can target a Blue Eyes on your side of the field, shuffle it into the deck, and then special summon this card. Which, it doesn't seem that bad, but like, why would you give up a level A big monster in order to get this card back onto the field? Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's just, and by the way, you have to get this card into the graveyard in order to even resolve that effect. So I just don't think this card is very, very good. It's better than Majesty, because Majesty sucks. Better than Storm Rider wins, and it's not as good as Blue Eyes Ultimate. Alternative, easily an S tier card. This card might actually be better than Blue Eyes, to be honest with you. Basically, I'm basing this list on how often you will see these cards in deck lists, and every single Blue Eyes build will always play Alternative. Like, you just will never catch a Blue Eyes deck with no alternatives, but you will sometimes catch Blue Eyes decks with 2 alternatives. Like most Blue Eyes decks I build now have 2 copies of Alternative instead of 3 copies of Alternative, because it is a hard once per turn, like, it is a once per turn summer. You can only summon it that way once in a turn. But this card is incredibly good. Like, going second, this is good. Going first, this is good. This is incredible. Such an easy card to summon, because all you have to do is just reveal a blue eye, summon it. It's a summoning condition. You basically throw out a 3,000 attack monster. This card helps you get over a lot of different floodgates. Like, if your opponent's playing like if your opponent, for example, is playing like Inspector board, you can special summon this, and right then and there you can just beat over his monster, because again, it's a summoning condition, not an activation. On top of that, you can easily beat Dragoon with this card, because if you have a Blue Eyes and an alternative, you just summon the alternative and crash with the Dragoon, just because it's a summoning condition. It's not an activated effect. Like I said, this card is very, very good. It's very easy to summon. It's just overall a very, very, very well written card. Probably the best piece of Blue Eye support in this entire list. I'm going to go through everything, but this is really definitely up there. The only card that I can say is maybe better than Blue Eyes White Dragon. Next we've got Azure. Easy A tier. A tier, not at top of A tier, but definitely A tier. Gives you protection. It's easy to summon. It special summons cards during the standby phase. During your standby phase, it summons extra normal monsters. It helps the grind game. Like, this card is just good in every way. It gives you protection and it helps you in the grind game. Very, very good card. Definitely easily deserving of A tier. Next, we've got the alternative, the Blue Eyes Alternative Dragon. This card I'm bouncing around. I'm probably going to put this in the bottom of B tier, just because this card is very difficult to summon. Again, anytime you have a fusion that requires 3 monsters and then a fusion spell, you're going to have problems. Like, it's just, you have too many things that you have to search, and you're investing way too many cards into one monster. Now, the beneficial part about this card is that it can't be targeted, it can't be destroyed, so when it comes out, you know, it's going to have some protection. But the issue is, this, like I said before, there's a lot of non-targeting destruction. Like, if your opponent has just any card that doesn't target but just removes from the field, this card is basically just a huge waste of resources. But then its second effect is, outside of the protection, is if you used Alternative Eyes as one of the fusion materials, you can basically pop up to 3 cards your opponent controls. If you didn't use any alternatives, then you can pop 1 card, and unfortunately, this is a really dumb effect, but it has the restriction of not being able to attack the turn you pop those cards, which is so stupid. Like, I hate when they put unnecessary restrictions on cards that are already very difficult to summon. So that's my problem with that card. That restriction didn't even need to exist on that card. It's already difficult enough to summon. Popping 3 cards is not going to... It's just not that broken, so I don't even know why that effect is on there. But that being said, this is probably the best of the 3-headed fusions that we've had so far. Neutron Blast, this is another card I just don't see myself using. I think it's better than these 2 cards, but basically, if you have a Blue Eyes Ultimate, this gives you 3 attacks, and then it stops your opponent from activating cards during the battle phase. Not a bad effect at all. Not bad at all. Very good effect. The problem is with this effect is that it's so difficult to summon Blue Eyes Ultimate. That's what makes this card so much worse, is that Blue Eyes Ultimate's really difficult to summon. But it is searchable with Bingo Machine Go. It has some positive characteristics. Like if you summon a Blue Eyes Ultimate and you activate this card and you enter battle phase successfully, you won the duel. But the problem is, how do you get there? That's the issue. Flute of Summoning Dragon. This is another card I just do not see myself using. It's definitely down here in the F tier, just because it requires you have Lord of D and then you summon Blue Eyes from your hand. Like, you summon dragons from your hand. It's just, there's too much unsearchable nonsense that has to go on here. This card is technically better because you have the new Lord of D that's out here, but like, it's just it's too much going on. And on top of that, it doesn't summon them from the graveyard. It doesn't summon them from the deck. It summons them from the hand. So you're gonna have to have so many hand resources invested just to summon some dragons from your hand. It's just absolutely not worth it. But it is better than regular old Lord of D, because technically it is searchable and you don't have to summon it. You don't have to waste your normal summon like you do on Lord of D. This is Spirit. Spirit is an A tier card. Spirit is better than Azure Eyes. Spirit, the best monster to summon during the end phase because it banishes a spawn trap card. Your biggest issue in Blue Eyes, this is actually better than Twin. The biggest issue with Blue Eyes is that you cannot... is basically spawn trap, like back row. Back row is the biggest problem for this deck, floodgates and back row, and this card basically deals with it. On top of it, if somebody like targets this card, you can switch it out for Blue Eyes in your head. Not bad at all. Master. Master is definitely, yeah. So Master is definitely C tier. I'd put him somewhere around here. Master is basically like Sage, but for the graveyard. Basically, when you normal summon him, you can add back a tuner from your graveyard, a level 1 tuner from your graveyard. And then it has another effect, which is that if this card's in the graveyard, you can shuffle it back into the deck, and then you can send an effect monster to the graveyard and special summon a Blue Eyes from your graveyard. So it's basically Sage from the graveyard, but because it's from the graveyard, it requires a ton of setup, so it's not as good. And for that reason, it's C tier and not any higher. But like, I can see myself playing one copy of this card. Like, it's not. I don't think this is out of the question. I don't think this is like a terrible, unbelievable card. The Melody of Awakening Dragon. We're talking S tier material here. This card is very good. It's very good. Not only is it good in this deck, it's good in other decks. Without a doubt, this is a very, very good card. Just because it allows you to discard and then search 2 cards. Very good for Blue Eyes. Number 1, discarding is usually pretty good in this deck. Because you discard stones and stuff like that, so you get additional resources, you get graveyard setup. On top of that, it basically will let you search the Blue Eyes and alternative and special summon the Blue Eyes, but it searches a lot more than that. It searches the ritual monsters, talking about Chaos Max, and it searches the Chaos Max, it searches Chaos, it searches like Emperor Dragon, it searches Chaos Dragon Levianeer. Like, this card searches a lot of, like, it really is kind of underrated in how many cards it can actually search. It's a very, very solid card. It can search the new Emperor Dragon. Yeah, like I said, this helps the deck a lot. It's very good. Next, we've got Beacon of Blue Eyes. Not a good card. Not a good card at all. Better than Priestess? No. Better than Neutron Blast? Yes. Basically, if you have 3 or more Blue Eyes cards in your graveyard, you can special summon a Blue Eyes from your graveyard, and then this gains attacks, and then that card is the only monster that can attack, and it gains attacks equal to the Blue Eyes you have in your graveyard, which almost sounds good, but it basically locks you into 1 attack, and then if you just go to battle phase and your opponent just like flips, I don't know, like Dogmatic of Punishment and pops that Blue Eyes, you just blew your battle phase, and you have to use this dumb card. On top of that, this card isn't actually searchable with Bingo Machine Go, unlike a lot of these cards, because it actually doesn't list Blue Eyes White Dragon specifically, so on top of it being not really that great, it's not even searchable. Chaos Max Dragon, A tier. Definitely A tier. I wouldn't put it in S tier because ritual monsters generally are more difficult to summon. But it is higher A tier. I'd say it's probably around here. It's the best of the ritual monsters that you have in Blue Eyes. It's better than the fusion monster, than all of the fusion monsters in Blue Eyes. It really is pretty good. It does double piercing, which is absolutely scary, especially when you can just give your opponent an incantation through Xian Spy, or you can give your opponent an incantation through the Geonator card, the brand new card. You can give your opponent any like zero defense monster, and it does double piercing, so you just attack and win just right then and there. We actually have a gameplay video on our channel right now showing just that. But definitely solid A tier. It's almost better than Spirit. I'd say it's very close. It's very close. This is a close race here. It's like right there. Next, we've got the Neo Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. I'd put this. It's better than, obviously, it's better than regular Blue Eyes Ultimate because it's Blue Eyes Ultimate with more effects. Is it better than Rampage? Yes. Is it better than Master? No. I put it right there. This card basically allows you to. It has a pretty decent effect and then some lackluster effects. Basically, during the battle phase, when you attack, you can send a Blue Eyes fusion monster to the graveyard, and then this card can make an additional attack that turn, and it can use that effect twice per turn. So basically, this card is 4,500 attack. It requires 3 Blue Eyes to summon, and it can basically attack 3 times in a turn as long as you can continue to send Blue Eyes fusion monsters to your graveyard. So it's not like bad. On top of that, it has a graveyard effect, which is if a Blue Eyes monster you control is targeted by an effect, you can basically negate and banish this card from the graveyard and negate. Like, that effect is not bad. I'd say And if you're playing against Dogmatica and you're playing pure Blue Eyes, I would definitely send this card and give you protection. Like it definitely wouldn't be a bad effect in that regard. Next, we've got the Ultimate Creature of Destruction, B tier. I'd say better than Destined Rivals, B tier. Yeah, this card's pretty good. Basically, it gives you protection for your... Basically, if you control a Blue Eyes monster, you flip this, that Blue Eyes monster can't be destroyed by battle, is unaffected by other card effects. It basically makes... Like, it's impossible to get rid of that Blue Eyes. Any monster that battles with it is destroyed. On top of that, if you summon a Blue Eyes, you can reset this from your graveyard. And that's probably the most underrated aspect of this card, is that it can reset itself, which is very, very good. But trap cards, of course, you can't activate at that turn. But a recurable trap card is just very good. The problem is, again, Blue Eyes isn't exactly a trap heavy, like it's not exactly a going first heavy deck. A lot of the effects are built to go second. There are a bunch of monsters that have 3,000 attack. Like just going second is typically not great in Blue Eyes. I mean, typically going second is generally the way you want to go with pure Blue Eyes, because like alternative pops cards, spirit pops cards, they're all 3,000 attack. This does double piercing. This has a battle effect. This has a battle effect. Like most of the good cards have some sort of battle effect or destruction effect. So now you're introducing a trap card that protects into a deck that generally speaking wants to go second and just attack you. But as far as trap cards go, this basically will protect you for one turn and ensure that you go second. But the problem is you can protect yourself going first, but your opponent will just set up an amazing board and it'll make it impossible for you to OTK them the following turn anyway. It basically just buys you a turn and makes your monsters your single monster impervious to an attack, and it does recur. So it is good, but it's not like unbelievably good. Solid Dragon. Solid Dragon. Solid Dragon's down here. Very underwhelming Blue Eyes card. That one of the more recent support cards. Very underwhelming. This card basically lets you... it's basically Spirit, but instead of banishing a spell or trap card, it targets a monster and negates its effects. That negate is permanent, but the issue is it's just not that great. Like, there's only situational areas where that effect would be good. Basically, on summon, it does it, so it's not like you can, like... It's not like your opponent summons Needle Fiber and then you respond with like a silver. It's not like you respond with like a special summon of this card and then negate that effect, because it's just it'll activate in the following chain. So the only time this is like relevant is if your opponent like summons a Predaplan and then you summon this and negate that effect. So it doesn't have as much relevance as the Spirit. In addition to that, its stats aren't great. Generally speaking, it's pretty weak. It's 2,500. It has a pretty cool effect where if your opponent activates any card effect, you can shuffle this into the deck and special summon a Blue Eyes from the deck, which is pretty good because it lets you dodge stuff. But again, getting this card on board is just not that great. Most of the time, you'll summon it off of Stone of Ancients. And what in the world do you want to negate during the end phase with a Stone of Ancients? Like in terms of monsters, like there's not a lot of terrific synergy with this card. It is better than Burst Stream though, but it's probably the top of C tier. Very underwhelming card. Spirit, top of A tier. Scratching S tier. Like, it's very, very good. Very good card. The fact that this card gives you access to other synchro monsters outside of the Blue Eyes archetype makes this card incredibly, incredibly good. We're talking F tier again. I think would actually be at the bottom. This is the new bottom of F tier. I think it might actually be worse than Spirit. This card is, we talk about investment cost, this card is absolutely not worth the investment cost. You have to fuse a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon and a copy of Blackluster Soldier. We're talking a ritual monster that is very underwhelming as it is, and a fusion monster that takes 3 requirements and a polymerization. Just think about all the cards you need to summon all of these cards. You need a polymerization. You need a copy of 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon. On top of that, you need a copy of Blackluster Soldier, the ritual spell, and then another level 8 monster. Just think about all of the stuff that you need to have in order to summon this card. And then when it comes out, you would think, wow, the effect is going to be really good. The only effect it has is that it gains 500 attack for every additional dragon on the field that you control, other than the card. So basically it's just a 5,000 attack monster that gains more attack when you have more dragons on the field, but you just used every dragon and every card in your hand in order to summon this in the first place. It's just absolutely not worth it. One of the worst, probably the worst Blue Eyes card on this list. Terrible. Then we've got Soul Successor. Newer card. Pretty good. Not technically a Blue Eyes card, but it has Blue Eyes in the artwork, so I put it in there. Better than solid. I'd put it at the bottom of B tier. This is a good card. Like, actually, it's better than this. You're more likely to summon it. I'm more likely to use this card than all of these other cards. Basically, this allows you to tribute an effect monster in order to send an opponent's monster to the graveyard. This is a quick play, which is a good thing for the card. And then it lets you summon a normal monster from the deck. All pretty good effects, I'd say. Pretty good effects. Generally, it works as an interruption. If you're going first, you just set it and then tribute a monster and then send it off. And also it helps you dodge things like impermanence, targeting effects. If your opponent like targets a monster you control, you just chain this, tribute the monster, and send a monster your opponent controls to the graveyard and special summon a monster, and your effect will still go through. This is very good if you summon like a Sage and then your opponent chains impermanence, and you basically tribute the Sage and then special summon like a Blue Eyes from your deck, send a monster they control to the graveyard, and then you get to, like I said, resolve Sage and search the card. Like, it has some cool synergy in the deck. It is a hard once per turn, so I just don't see myself playing more than one copy of this card, and that's a major issue in that regard. Next, we are playing one... Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was... Next, we've got the... This is another one that's high up on A tier. We've got the Stone of Ancients. This card, when it came out, was absolutely broken. Like, in 2016, this card was disgusting. It was one of the best cards in the meta. I was, like, if I was doing this list in 2016, this would easily be S tier. This would be the best card. But currently, it is not. Just because the game is sped up so much that summoning a monster during the end phase is just not as good as it was in 2016. It just, that is the cruel reality of the situation. This card is just not as good as it used to be. I actually find myself using the second effect, which is banishing this card from the graveyard in order to add back a Blue Eyes to my hand. I actually find myself using that effect more than I find myself using the effect to summon during the end phase. That's how terrible this has gone. But yeah, basically this card, like I said, it just, as time goes on, it gets worse and worse and worse. And I wouldn't be surprised if this card one day is like somewhere here. Just if the game keeps speeding up at the pace it's speeding up, this card will just continue to get worse and worse and worse. But as of right now, I'd say it's higher A tier. It's one of the better Blue Eyes cards for sure. Dragon Revival Rhapsody. I'd put this somewhere. I'd say it's worse than Soul Successor, is better than all these other cards. This card basically, if you control Spellcaster, lets you special summon 2 dragon monsters from the graveyard, including 1 normal monster. It has to be a normal monster, and then you can't attack for the rest of the turn, which is just like, eh. This card is like good because all of your tuners are spellcasters anyway, so it's really not bad. All you have to have is 2 Blue Eyes in the graveyard. It's very easy to use. On top of that, you don't even have to... Relinquish Anima has actually made this card better because you can like normal summon this, link it away into Relinquish Anima, now you have a spellcaster, and this card is basically live. So this card's definitely not bad, and it's searchable off of the King of D here. So I could see myself certainly using this in the deck, but it's not... The problem is you have to get a spellcaster on board, and then it locks you out of attacking. Like I said before, Blue Eyes is a deck that has a lot of effects that you want to use going second, and when you have a card that stops you from attacking in a deck where you very much want to attack, all your monsters are huge, it kind of is a bit unproductive. Going first, this card is a lot better, but going second, I'm a little iffy on it, so that's why it is where it is. And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if it was cut altogether. Protector, this card's interesting because it's like a 1-card Needle Fiber, but outside of that, it's just not that great. Yeah, so this card is basically just like a... This card is basically, it's somewhere around Master. Master and Protector are somewhere the same. This card is basically like Sage, but instead of the deck, it does it from the hand. So this is like Sage. This is Sage from the graveyard, and this is Sage from the hand. It's a pretty cool design overall. This, I think, is a little bit better than Master. Basically, this card, when it's normal summon, you can summon another level 1 tuner from your hand you can special summon. So technically speaking, this card is a one, like, I guess 2-card Needle Fiber, which isn't bad because you can do a lot with Needle Fiber. But the issue is, it's just really kind of lackluster otherwise, because there's other cards that do this card's job better. But also this card allows you to send an effect monster to the graveyard and then special summon a Blue Eyes from your hand, which again, there are just better ways to do that. Sage is just infinitely better than this card. That's why it is where it is. Next we've got Paladin of the Blue Eyes. This card is down here with these guys. It's aged so poorly. This card has aged terribly. Basically, if this card attacks a monster, if this card attacks a face down defense position monster, you can destroy it automatically. Completely irrelevant in Yu-Gi-Oh today. It's just entirely irrelevant. No one sets monsters except for like Guru and Subterra Guru, like Subterra decks, and Subterra decks flip their monsters during your turn anyway. That effect is completely outdated. It's just not good at all. Secondly, this effect is the second effect is you can tribute this card to summon a Blue Eyes, but again, that is just so outdated. Like, just think about how much you have to invest. You have to use a ritual spell, you have to use a level 4 monster, you have to use this card, and then you tribute this card to summon one single Blue Eyes. Like, it's just absolutely not worth the effort that you put into it. It's a Kaiba Man, but worse. That's how terrible this. It's a worse Kaiba Man, and Kaiba Man is an F tier. So where does that put this card? Next, we've got the Stone of Legend. I'd say this is, if you're playing a combo Blue Eyes deck, this card is 100% a must. This is a card that actually, Stone of Ancients aged poorly. And like I said before, the longer time we go, the worse this card will be. This card actually ages well, because when it came out, it was pretty good. And then as Blue Eyes became meta, this card actually shifted to the background. It actually became like a one-of in some decks. It got to the point where this card was like barely played. It was a one-of. Sometimes people didn't even play it. But like in a modern build, this card is actually one of the best cards in the entire Blue Eyes archetype. It's extremely good with Saryuja Skull Dread Dragon. Unbelievably good with that card, because you can keep searching Blue Eyes and then shuffle the Blue Eyes right back into the deck again. This card is extremely good in that deck. Very good. But the issue with this card is there's really no issues. It really is. And on top of that, it's not that there's issues with this card. It's that this card is very, very good. Is what I'm basically saying. This card is very, very good. It is a mandatory activation. It always searches, regardless of what, no matter how you send it to the graveyard. You can send it from your hand, you can send it from your deck, you can send it from the field, you can link it away, you can detach it for material. No matter what you do, this card is activating. It can go for cost. This card is just very, very good. It always searches you a Blue Eyes, and like I said, the Blue Eyes just gives you more advantage. If you use it with Dangers, it's very, very good. Definitely up there in the Blue Eyes deck. Sage is an A tier card. It's here. This card, it was headed towards the direction where this card was almost not going to be played in the deck anymore. Like, I found myself making most Blue Eyes deck profiles without Sage. But generally speaking, I think Sage is a very well-designed card. It's a very, it's a very well-designed card. It's a very fair card. It searches a level 1 tuner on normal summon. It can search Effect Veiler, which is outside of the archetype, but it can still search it, which is pretty good. And on top of that, it lets you send a card to the graveyard, the effect monster to the graveyard, in order to special summon this, in order to special summon a Blue Eyes from the deck, by discarding this and sending that. So I'm not huge on that effect, because that effect is basically a -1, because you're getting a Blue Eyes by giving up 2 cards, and one of the cards is on the field. But, I mean, it's not the worst effect ever. Sometimes it can certainly come up. The searching effect is also pretty good. And, of course, it is a tuner. So you can, go into all types of needle fiber plays and go into the spirit plays, synchro plays, stuff like that. Definitely not a bad card. But this card is another one that is just aging like cheese. Like, as it goes on, this card will continue to get worse and worse and worse. It will at one point, I think, be better than the Stone of Ancients, but because the normal summon search just will always be good. But Stone of Ancients, the end phase effect is just, it's going to age poorly, basically, is what I'm saying. But this card is definitely, it's below Ancients right now, but it can surpass it within time. Silver's Cry is here. Is it better? Yeah, it's better than Revival Rhapsody because it doesn't require much. Basically, this card is a quick effect that lets you special summon a monster from your graveyard that's a normal monster, that's a normal dragon. Very good effect. It has a quick, it's a quick effect. It's a quick play spell. So, and you can target the spirit, and then you can banish stuff. So this card is very, very good with spirit. It's like a nice combo here. Yeah, you typically want to use it with spirit. It does work with the regular Blue Eyes. It's not a bad card, definitely. It's very good too, because unless you dodge stuff like Call by the Grave, like if your opponent activates Call by the Grave, you can chain this and then just bring back Spirit, and you just, now they can't banish the card from the graveyard, which is, you know, not bad and useful. Yeah, it's somewhere around there, but a lot of Blue Eyes decks are cutting it just because of space issues. Maiden, oh, this card aged like I said, worse than milk. Like, this card is, it's down here, man. This card used to be the best Blue Eyes card. Like, no debate, the best Blue Eyes card. Basically, when this card is attacked, you could change the defense mode, summon a Blue Eyes. That effect used to be disgusting in like 2014. It had another effect where you can target it. Whenever this card is targeted, you can just send it to the graveyard, and then when this card is targeted, you can special summon a Blue Eyes. So whether you're targeting by card effect or it's targeted by attack, either way, it's going to special summon a Blue Eyes, which that effect isn't too bad. But the only time that this card really comes up is with Sage with Eyes of Blue. It is a cool combo to have Sage and the Maiden. It is a pretty decent combo, but generally speaking, in the modern game, this card is just not enough. It's not enough to summon a Maiden and just end turn and then just like stall out. Like in a really, really constricted game state where like you're in the grind game, this card can still be somewhat good. But generally speaking, this card is just way too slow to be played in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! I just do not see myself playing this card ever. Like, it's just not, it's not good enough. Next we've got, we'll just do this side because this one's an easy one. I'll put this right next. This is basically the ritual spell for the Paladin. The Paladin's not good, so the ritual spell is definitely not going to be good. On top of that, this ritual spell is just like a normal ritual spell. It has no additional effects whatsoever. If you're playing a normal ritual spell in 2021, it's not good enough. It has no graveyard effect, it has no nothing. It's just a plain old ritual spell. It doesn't do enough, basically, is what I'm saying. It's just as bad as this card, possibly even worse, because this, like a ritual spell that doesn't have any sort of way to cheat out your monsters or way to search or something like that, is just not good enough in the modern era. The King of D, not a bad card. Cost is terrible. That's the issue with this card. So I'll put it here. This card isn't terrible. The terrible part about this card is the cost of this card. This card basically on summon allows you to discard a Spell or Trap keyword, Spell or Trap, in order to search the Flute of Summoning Dragons, Melody of Awakening Dragons, or Dragon Revival Rhapsody. It can search any of those three cards, which is not a bad effect. Believe me, it's not a bad effect. Those are good cards to search. Maybe not the Flute, but these two are actually, like pretty good cards. The issue is that you have to discard a Spell or Trap card. Now, if you're discarding something like this, it's not that bad. It's not that big of a deal. It's actually a pretty cool combo, right? If you're discarding this, like if you're discarding Ultimate Creature of Destruction, or if you're discarding a copy of Mausoleum, like it's really not that bad of a card. The issue is when you discard something like something that you can actually use, like a trade-in or something like that. That's when the problems come. And on top of that, if you don't have Spell and Trap cards in your hand, you can't discard monsters, so that is a huge problem. And one of the things that you want to do in Blue Eyes is discard monsters. Like, you want to discard the Stone of Ancients and the Stone of Legend. You want to discard those cards because they get you searches and they get you summons during the end phase. So you definitely, it just is a bit too counterproductive to the deck in general, and that's my biggest problem with the deck. Big Ol' Machine Go, very controversial. Very controversial. This is, I'd say, somewhere around here. This card is a search card that is just so... It's worse than Melody. And Melody wasn't even, like... Melody was made with Blue Eyes in mind, but it worked outside of Blue Eyes. This card was made with Blue Eyes in mind, and it does a worse job than Melody. This card is just so lackluster. It basically lets you reveal 3 cards in your deck that have Blue Eyes in its text, is a Blue Eyes monster, or has Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon in its text. So spell and trap cards that have Blue Eyes or Blue Eyes White Dragon or Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon in their text, or Blue Eyes monsters. That is a lot of cards. It can search the Chaos Max Dragon. It can search this Chaos Max Dragon. It can search Blue Eyes, all of the different Blue Eyes that like Blue Eyes monsters. It can't search any of the tuners, and that sucks that it cannot search the tuners. On top of that, like, this card is a hard once per turn in a deck that draws a lot of cards. It draws a lot. So what often happens is you actually get multiple copies of this card, and since they are hard once per turns, there's not a lot of hard once per turns on this list. This card is a hard once per turn, and because of that, you get multiples in your starting hand, and sometimes you draw multiples, and they are completely dead cards. And on top of that, you reveal 3 cards to your opponent, and then your opponent picks one of them at random, which is another just aspect of stupidity and randomness in this card that I just don't like. Yeah, so one big issue that I have with this card is that, like, let's say, for example, you had, like, a certain amount of cards in the graveyard already, or a certain amount of cards in your opening hand. Well, now you cannot search that card multiple times. Like, let's say you have the Ultimate Creature of Destruction in your hand, and you wanted to search a second one. Well, now you only have 2 copies in your deck, so there's always that chance that your opponent will actually pick a copy of a card that isn't Ultimate Creature of Destruction, despite the fact that that's the card that you want to search. And it kind of creates an issue, especially longer time in, like, the longer you go into the game, the bigger issue it creates. Like, for example, like, let's say you have an alternative in hand, and you want to search a copy of regular Blue Eyes, and you have 2 copies of regular Blue Eyes already in graveyard. Well, now you have to pick 3 cards, and your opponent picks one randomly, so there's no, like, guarantee that you'll get that copy of Blue Eyes, and it'll basically have a dead alternative in your hand. And that's a huge issue with this card. It just has too many inconsistent components, and I really don't like that about a search card. Search cards are supposed to increase consistency, not decrease it, and that is one of the biggest issues. You can easily put this card somewhere up here. I might just be a little hard on it. Honestly, I'll probably put it up here. But as far as search cards goes, I just don't see this card as more than a one-of, and that is really frustrating, all things considered. And especially considering how expensive this card is, it's just not worth it in any way. Next, we've got the Malefic Blue Eyes. This card can range. This card can absolutely range. So if you're playing a field spell, this card is very good. This card is very good. It's probably up here if you're playing a field spell. If you're not playing a field spell, it's like F tier. It's useless. It's unusable. It destroys itself if you don't have a field spell on field. That's how bad it is. But if you have a field spell, if you're playing Dragon's Ravine, for example, this card is very good. It's a free dragon. It's a free special summon of a level 8 monster, and then you can go into XYZ plays. You can go into Synchro plays. If you play a field spell, this card is amazing. If you don't, this card is completely terrible, unusable. Don't even bother. So that's where I put it. This card in a combo build, where you are using in a combo build, this card is very good because you put all of your Blue Eyes back into your deck with Yugioh, so you always have them in there, and then you can just banish it, summon this, and then go into like a Hope Harbinger or something like that. So it's very, very good for those purposes. It's better than a lot of these cards just based on the fact that it's a free summon, and it requires nothing else. It's even in certain ways better than alternative. All it requires you is to banish a Blue Eyes from your deck. It's very good for that. All right, next we've got the Dragon's Fighting Spirit. This card is absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. Like, just text-wise, this card is written so poorly. Basically, you target one of your dragon monsters, and then for every single monster that your opponent special summon this turn, you get to gain an additional attack. Now, the reason that's bad is because most decks don't special summon during your turn. And if your opponent is special summoning a lot during your turn, there's something very bad going on. They're either summoning a barrier statue, some kind of floodgate. Like your opponent is not going to special summon a bunch of times during your turn. So that makes this card just atrocious. Next, we've got the Strength in Unity. This card is one of the crossover cards. Not a great card. Not a great card at all. I'd say it's somewhere, probably like here. Not a great card at all. Basically, if you ritual summon using a Blue Eyes, or you ritual summon or fusion summon using a Blue Eyes, you can banish a card on the field, which is just like, again, you know how much, just look at how much effort you have to put into doing one of those things, and your payoff is that you get to banish one card. I mean, that's just embarrassing. Who cares? One card, you summon a Blue Eyes alternative, you give up 4 cards to summon it, and then your result is that you get to banish 1 card with your last remaining 5th card. Like, why would you want to do that? On top of that, this card lets you send it to the graveyard to add back to either shuffle a normal monster into the deck or add it back to hand, which, again, like, what purpose is that going to play? You've already used the card to ritual summon or use the fusion summon, so like, what is that card going to do in your hand now? Like, is it going to allow you to ritual summon again? I just don't see it. I don't see this card as being that good of a card. Maybe a one-of in a Chaos Max Dragon build, but a very uncompetitive one-of in a Chaos Max Dragon build. But like I said, that card is just not there for me. But that is basically it. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I've reviewed every single Blue Eyes card that has come out so far. Lots of very good cards on this list, and if you enjoy this video, definitely leave a like. Tons of Blue Eyes content on this channel. This is like the Blue Eyes channel. Tons of content. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, and have a great day, guys.